In the deep, quiet corners of old Japan, darkness was not merely the absence of light. It was a living, breathing thing, filled with unseen presences and rustling whispers that danced just at the edge of hearing. These were the realms of the yokai, the strange and often terrifying spirits, monsters and apparitions that populated the folklore of my homeland. They were born from the fears of everyday people, from the creak of a floorboard in an empty house, the strange howl of the wind through bamboo groves. People did not simply tell stories about yokai, they lived with a profound and genuine respect for their power, understanding that the veil between our world and theirs was thin. To understand yokai is to understand a world where the supernatural was woven into the very fabric of existence. The world of yokai is vast and varied, a veritable parade of the bizarre and the grotesque. There are the mischievous kappa, the terrifying oni, there are tsukumogami, household objects that spring to life. This brings us to a particularly unsettling creature, one born from a very specific fear, the fear of losing a precious resource. The name itself, Abura Akago, carries a simple yet deeply unsettling meaning. Abura means oil, the kind used to fuel the lamps and lanterns that provided the only source of light in the homes of old Japan. Akago means baby or infant. So, this creature is, quite literally, the oil baby. The legend of this strange yokai is most strongly associated with the Omi province, known today as Shiga Prefecture. This is a region rich in history and folklore surrounding the Great Lake Biwa. It was in the towns and villages of Omi, nestled between mountains and water, where stories first began to circulate about a peculiar and frightening presence. The tale of the Abura Akago was not just a story told around a fire. It was a genuine fear for the people of the time. Imagine living in a small wooden house. Your only defense against the oppressive darkness was a small dish of oil with a lit wick. This light was your security, your comfort. The thought of something supernatural consuming that precious light was a source of profound dread. The legend became particularly well known thanks to the work of artists and folklorists during the Edo period. One of the most famous depictions comes from the artist Toriyama Sekien, who included the Abura Akago in his illustrated encyclopedia of supernatural creatures. It is said that the legend took hold in a specific town in Omi, near the foothills of Mount Hii, home to the sprawling Enryaku-ji temple complex. The arrival of the Abura Akago is not marked by a creaking door or a tapping at the window. It begins as a mysterious ball of fire, a small, floating orb of light that drifts silently through the night air. It would pass through the walls or paper screens as if they were not there, a ghostly apparition that defied the physical laws of the world. Once inside the room, the fireball undergoes a horrifying transformation. The flames flicker and coalesce, the indistinct ball of light slowly taking on a new, more definite shape. Before the terrified eyes of anyone who might be awake to witness it, the fire morphs into the form of a small child, a baby. This is the Abura Akago, in its true, grotesque form. It is often described as having a long, lapping tongue, its eyes wide and vacant. Having taken its baby form, the Abura Akago crawls across the floor toward the source of the light, the Andan lamp. It then does what its name implies, it begins to drink the oil. With its long, eerie tongue it laps up the precious fuel from the lamp's dish, consuming the very substance that keeps the darkness at bay. Once the oil is gone, the flame sputters and dies, plunging the room into absolute blackness. The Abura Akago's purpose is fulfilled, and it vanishes as mysteriously as it arrived. The terror of this encounter lies in its quiet intimacy. It enters the sanctum of the home and steals the one thing that provides comfort and security against the night. Every yokai has an origin, a reason for its existence, and the Abura Akago is no exception. Its story is not one of a natural spirit or an ancient demon, but a tale rooted in human sin and earthly punishment. The belief in Omi province was that these strange oil-drinking babies were the reborn ghosts of wicked oil thieves who had died without atoning for their crimes. In a time when oil was a vital and often expensive commodity, stealing it was considered a serious offense, not just against a merchant but against the entire community that relied on that oil for light and safety. The legend served as a powerful moral warning against the sins of greed and theft, suggesting that such transgressions would follow you even beyond the grave. The most common version of the origin story tells of a specific oil merchant who lived in a town in Omi. This merchant was known to be greedy, and he would often steal oil that was intended as an offering for the Jizo statue at a local crossroads. Jizo is a beloved bodhisattva in Japan, a guardian of travelers, children, and lost souls. To steal from such a revered figure was not just theft, it was an act of profound disrespect and sacrilege. As the story goes, the merchant died suddenly, without ever being punished for his crimes in the mortal world. However, the karmic weight of his sins followed him into the afterlife. As a divine punishment for his sacrilege and his endless greed for oil, his soul was reborn into the world in a monstrous form. He was condemned to become an Abura Akago, forever cursed with an insatiable thirst for the very substance he had stolen in life. His punishment was to wander the earth as a flickering flame, entering the homes of others and lapping up their lamp oil, never to find peace or satisfaction, forever trapped in a cycle of his own making. This origin story adds a layer of tragic irony to the yokai's actions. The Abura Akago is not merely a monster, it is a tormented soul paying an eternal price. In the modern world, we really take light for granted. With just the flip of a switch, we can banish darkness from even the largest of rooms, instantly and without a second thought. But back in Edo period Japan, light was a luxury, a precious and carefully managed resource. The primary source of indoor lighting was the andon, a simple lamp made from a paper-enclosed frame around a small dish filled with oil and a wick. The most common fuel was rapeseed oil or fish oil. This oil had to be either purchased or produced through a lot of hard work. For an average family, keeping one lamp lit for a few hours after sunset was a noticeable expense. To lose this oil wasn't just an inconvenience, it could be a genuine hardship. The loss meant being plunged into a deep, oppressive darkness that we can scarcely imagine today. Without light, evening activities like sewing, reading, or repairing tools became impossible. The home would suddenly feel insecure and vulnerable. Every creak of the wooden structure, every rustle of wind outside the paper screens would be magnified in the pitch black, feeding the imagination with fears of intruders, both human and supernatural. The light from an andon was a fragile shield against the unknown, and the thought of it being stolen was the thought of having your only defense taken away. The Abura Akago first shows up as a ball of fire, or hinotama. This puts it in a much bigger and older group of Japanese supernatural phenomena. Mysterious flames floating around at night have been a common part of stories all over the country for hundreds of years. People almost always think they are signs of spirits or strange energy. These fiery balls were believed to be the souls of dead people, moving between the world of the living and the afterlife. One of the most famous is the onebi, which means demon fire. These are usually bluish-white balls of light that are said to lead travelers off course in forests and swamps, kind of like the will-o'-the-wisps in European stories. Another similar phenomenon is the kitsunebi, or foxfire. These are long lines of mysterious lanterns or torches seen far away at night, believed to be made by kitsune, or fox spirits, to trick unwary humans. The Abura Akago's fireball shape fits perfectly with this tradition, but with a special twist. While many hinotama are seen as just floating around or being generally mischievous, the Abura Akago's fire has a very specific home-based target: the oil in your lamp. It's not just a lost soul or a trickster spirit, it's a ghost with a focused earthly desire. This specific goal is what makes it so unsettling. While the stories of ghostly oil thieves and divine punishment are deeply compelling, some have sought a more rational, scientific explanation for the sightings of the Abura Akago. In a world before widespread scientific literacy, many natural phenomena were interpreted through the lens of folklore and superstition. Things that we can easily explain today were once seen as the work of gods, demons, or yokai. One of the most plausible scientific theories proposed to explain the legend of the Abura Akago is the rare and mysterious weather phenomenon known as ball lightning. Ball lightning is an atmospheric electrical phenomenon whose physical nature is still not well understood by science. It is typically described as a luminous, spherical object that can range from pea-sized to several meters in diameter. Eyewitness accounts often describe these orbs as floating, hovering, or moving erratically. Crucially, they are sometimes reported to pass through solid objects like walls or windows without leaving a mark, behaving in a way that seems to defy the laws of physics. This description aligns almost perfectly with the traditional depiction of a hinotama. Imagine a person in Edo period Japan, sitting in their dimly lit home during a thunderstorm. Suddenly, a glowing orb of light drifts silently through their paper screen wall. In the flickering, unreliable light of an andon lamp, and with a mind steeped in folklore, it would be entirely natural to interpret this terrifying and inexplicable event as the arrival of a spirit. The human brain is wired to find patterns and create narratives. Once the terrifying ball of light appeared, the witness's mind might have filled in the rest of the details based on the stories they had heard all their life. Whether the Abura Akago is the restless ghost of a sinner or a misidentified natural phenomenon, its story has carved a permanent place for itself in the rich tapestry of Japanese folklore. The tale has endured for centuries, passed down through generations, evolving from a local ghost story in Omi province to a recognized figure in the national pantheon of yokai. The yokai's power lies not in its physical threat, but in the psychological unease it creates. The story of the Abura Akago serves as a fascinating window into the anxieties and values of a bygone era. It speaks to a time when darkness was a palpable presence, and light was a fragile, precious commodity. It reflects a society where community resources were vital. The legend is a moral fable wrapped in a ghost story, a warning that greed has consequences that transcend the mortal coil. It reminds us that the monsters we create in our stories are often reflections of the very real fears and moral dilemmas of our own lives. Even today, in a world illuminated by electricity, the Abura Akago retains its chilling power. The image of a supernatural entity invading the sanctity of the home is a timeless horror trope. While we no longer fear the loss of lamp oil, the core anxieties that created the Abura Akago remain with us. We still fear invasion of our private spaces. We still worry about losing resources that give us security. The ultimate question of the Abura Akago's true nature, spirit or ball lightning, remains unanswered, and perhaps it is best that way. The ambiguity is part of what makes the legend so enduring. In the end, the Abura Akago is more than just a peculiar monster from an old story. It's a symbol of a fear that is both specific to its time and deeply universal. It represents the anxiety of loss, the dread of a precious resource being drained away by forces beyond our control. In old Japan, that resource was oil, the very substance that held the terrifying yokai-filled night at bay. The loss of that oil meant the loss of safety, comfort, and the simple ability to see what might be lurking in the corners of one's own home. The persistence of this legend speaks to the power of storytelling to capture the essence of human experience. The people of Omi province who first whispered tales of the oil baby were not just trying to scare each other, they were trying to make sense of their world, to enforce moral codes, and to explain the unexplainable. The yokai provided an answer, one that was far more compelling and memorable than simple chance. While we no longer fear the loss of lamp oil, the core anxieties that created the Abura Akago remain with us. We still fear invasion of our private spaces. We still worry about losing resources that give us security. We still tell stories about the consequences of greed. The form of the monster may change, but the fear it represents is timeless. The Abura Akago is a ghostly reminder that our anxieties have always found a way to take shape in the dark, crawling from the shadows to haunt us. And so, the little oil baby continues its eternal, nightly crawl through the pages of folklore. It remains a chilling figure, a testament to the creativity of the human imagination when confronted with fear. The next time you find yourself in the deep quiet of the night, and a light flickers unexpectedly, perhaps you will think of the Abura Akago. You might find yourself glancing at the dark corners of the room, and for just a moment, you will understand the profound and chilling fear that gave birth to the oil baby of Omi.